Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name's James. I'm the candidate coach and coming to you live this Thursday morning. Thanks for jumping on and being part of today's live streaming workshop. Today's workshop is a little bit different to other workshops. We're just going to simply be asking the questions that you've been sending through. We've had this session advertised for a little while now, so we've had plenty of questions come through on the socials and via email. I've had to limit it to 20 questions and we'll see how we go to get through them all. We might even have to cut a couple if we're running over time. But what I want to do today is really spend some time answering the burning questions that you have, probably as a job seeker who's maybe struggling a little bit. So we're going to go through these questions. Also happy to take more questions. So wherever you're watching this, on whatever platform it is, you'll have the ability to be able to ask more questions. And I'd encourage you to pop them in because I'm streaming to you live. It's Thursday morning and we want to answer your questions. So no visual aids today. It's just going to be me going through the questions that we've got in advance and hopefully giving you some great answers. All right, let's go with the very first question. It's come from a job seeker called Darren, and Darren has said, I have been employed for over 20 years. I want to start looking for a new job. Where do I go to begin? So that's a great question, Darren. If you've been working for a long time, maybe 10, 20 years, where do you go to begin looking for work? Well, the first thing I'd recommend you do is that you do a lot of research. And the best place to start doing that research is on the job boards. There you'll obviously see positions that are advertised, but it'll help to give you a real understanding for the types of roles that are available that are of interest to you. And one of the important things that you can do is to start to get a sense of how many vacancies, for example, there are. If you're looking for a role where there's a lot of vacancies in your area, let's say you see 20 or 30 advertisements, you know that there's a number of organizations hiring. However, if you only find one or two advertisements, well, then that's really important for you to know because it means that opportunities aren't coming up very often. And when you are applying for those roles, you have to do so with great care and diligence. So where I would recommend you start, Darren, is on the job boards. Get a sense of what's available, have a look around. I'd then start to use your own network. Talk to people within your organization and talk to people outside of your organization to find what's happening in the marketplace. Excuse me there, a little bit of a sneeze. Find what's happening in the marketplace and find out how other people's careers have gone. Let them know that you're looking for work because you'll hear about the hidden job market. It is real and it's possible for you to access it. Second question, and I've done these in order, so you'll see that they kind of build on each other today as well. How do I figure out what kind of job suits me best? Well, this really is a very important question that is challenging to answer because the answer is going to be different for every single person. How do I know what type of job is going to suit me best? If you're employed at the moment and you're not particularly happy with your work and you're wondering whether you're in the right career, I'd encourage you to, first of all, decide whether it's the type of work you're doing or the type of organization that you're working for. That's the problem, because it's likely to be more one than the other. It might feel like both. You might be like, I don't really like working here and I don't like the job. But if you moved your job to an organization that you loved, would you then enjoy the work? Or if you love the organization that you're in and not the job, well, then you clearly know. So you need to identify what you don't like at the moment and what you do like. I'd also encourage you to have a look on our candidate coaching platform. We have a career change course. It's 3 episodes. You can do it at your own pace, and it takes you on a journey, particularly if you're considering changing careers, and you can come out with some tangible responses. So I hope that helps. All right, let's have a look at the third question. Someone's asked best websites and best apps to find jobs listings. I've heard that social media is really taking over Seek. I would still be starting with the major job boards. I think Seek, Indeed, you've got LinkedIn, depending on the level of work that you're looking for, they're really important. I still think many of the local news publications, particularly if you're in a rural or regional area, I live in Warrnambool, there's still plenty of jobs that are advertised in the Saturday paper. I'd be going to those. Jobs do get advertised on social media, but they're normally sort of being reposted. So it might be a company that's already got the job on Seek, and they've also got it on their careers website, and then they also post it on their social media. But that's another good point. Identify the companies that you want to work for. So you don't just have to find advertisements on the job boards. You can go directly to the company. So if you think, hey, I would love to work for Australia Post, you don't have to just go on Seek. You can jump on their website and you can go to their careers section and you can find roles specifically at Australia Post on their own website. And that's a great way to apply. All right, question number 4. How can I tailor my resume for different jobs? Well, this is a great question that's come from Maria. Maria, thank you for asking that question. I know for most people, actually, it's probably for everyone, you don't enjoy writing a resume. And as a job coach, I'm okay with saying that. I'm at peace with it. People don't like writing resumes. And the effort of actually writing your resume can be really large. But it is super important that you are tailoring your resume for every job. And that's because every job application that you make is to a different organization. And even though the position title will be different, there'll be certain things within the advertisement. So what I recommend for most people is that your resume is probably going to be 90, even 95% the same for nearly every role, but we're just going to tweak a little couple of things. So the main way that you're going to tweak it is probably in your most recent position, you'll have about 6 to 8 dot points that highlight your responsibilities, and you'll have maybe 2 or 3 achievements. Now, that part of your resume needs to be as closely linked as possible to the advertisement, to the role that's being advertised. And so that's why you need to tweak that part. So if you're applying for a job and they have the key selection criteria for the job is 1, 2, and 3, you want to show 1, 2, and 3 as closely as you can in your resume. So you're going back to your dot points because you can only have 6 to 8. So the 6 to 8 things that you list there need to match the advertisement. You probably had 100 responsibilities in your last job. So we're not saying to lie, but you need to pick the 6 to 8 that are most relevant to your to the job that you're applying for. And so most of your resume just remains the same. It's just tweaking a couple of things. Or you might read an advertisement and go, oh, do you know what? They've mentioned a particular software here. I haven't got that listed on my resume. I need to get it listed on my resume and I need to make it easy to find. Question 5 on the back of resumes, do I still need to write a cover letter for every job application? Yes, unless the advertisement says don't write a cover letter, you need to write a cover letter. Some recruiters read the cover letter before they even open the resume. So if you send an application in for a role without a cover letter and that recruiter's preference is to receive a cover letter, then you're already sitting behind the other candidates in terms of how the recruiter's viewing you. So I would say every time you submit an application, you should include a cover letter unless you're specifically told not to. I'd also say you only have 2 opportunities to stand out as a candidate. One is your resume. The second is your cover letter. So why you would skip or pass on these, or why you wouldn't put a great tailored cover letter together, kind of baffles me, because it is an opportunity for you to stand out in I guess a system or a procedure where you don't have a lot of opportunity. So write a great customized tailored cover letter for each role that you're applying to. I promise you that the recruiters that read it will be impressed. Question 6 for today, how do I identify my transferable skills if I'm changing careers? Oh, this is a really good question. We get this quite commonly. Again, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at our course, our career change course on the Candidate Coach platform. If you can't find it, you can reach out directly to me, James Whitcomb, on LinkedIn and send me a message. But identifying your transferable skills, it takes a little bit of self-analysis. It also probably takes a lot of research. You could also use AI to do it. Jump on Perplexity or jump onto Gemini upload your resume, and you can ask the AI algorithm to say, what type of transferable skills do I have? Or what are my most transferable skills towards another role? But also just have a look through what other roles do. One of the challenges with career changes and looking at transferable skills is you need to recognize that the role that you're going to transfer into, you're not going to have all of the skills, and therefore you need to be prepared a lot of the time to take a pay cut. And that's just something that doesn't sit well with a lot of job seekers. They want to be able to transfer their skills to a new role. They might only meet 60% of the criteria straight away, but they also want to retain the same level of salary. So I would suggest that if you want to change jobs and change careers, you can definitely do it. You need to be flexible though, particularly with the first job that you take. And you should be able to get back to your previous salary quite quickly once you learn the differences with the new role. But you need to be prepared to be flexible with salary if you want to be given a chance. What's the best way to reach out to a recruiter or a hiring manager? Great question. So I actually think the best way to reach out, certainly the best way to stand out, is to pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and give the recruiter a call. Because guess what's happening? If you call me, and you can find my number anywhere, it's pretty easy. You can with many recruiters, certainly not all. If you can get the recruiter on the phone and they're talking to you, you've got their attention. Now, you might only get their attention for 1 or 2 minutes, so you need to be really, really well prepared on what you want to ask them. You don't just want to say, hey, I'm looking for work. You don't just want to say, hey, I've applied for the job. You might want to say, hi, my name's James. I've just sent through my application for the sales assistant role. I had 2 or 3 questions. Do you have a quick moment? If they say yes, the 2 or 3 questions that you need to ask need to be well prepared. They need to be written down, and then to be questions that show the level of research that you've done into the position and also your level of expertise. Don't just ask, what are the hours? What's the location? What's the pay? What are the next steps from here? Ask something that shows why you're a highly qualified candidate for the role. All right, where's my question? All right, what are we up to? How can I prepare an effective LinkedIn profile when looking for work? So again, and I don't want to feel like I'm just pushing everybody back to our online coaching, but we've got 3 videos on our candidate coaching platform that you can use here. How to create how to create your LinkedIn profile for the first time, how to maximize your profile strengths, and also how to network. I'd really encourage you to watch those videos. Your LinkedIn profile is huge for your personal brand. It's huge for your professional and your career brand as well. A lot of people sort of dust off their LinkedIn profile when they start looking for work, and then they forget about it when they're not. So I would really encourage you, like most social media platforms, to be on there all the time. But you certainly want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile is selling you, that it's got a lot of your achievements listed, that there's a featured section where you can pin things to. It's kind of like your resume. It needs to promote you, but it's also a lot more visual. So definitely have a profile picture there. But just engage on LinkedIn. Don't be passive. Question 9, how do I stay motivated during a long job search? I've been looking for work for 3 months now, and I'm feeling really depressed about the whole thing. That question's come through from Tony. Tony, I'm sorry to hear that's how you're feeling. I work with a lot of what I call medium to long-term unemployed individuals, and the feeling that you have is quite common. You can feel quite despondent and certainly demotivated when you've been looking for work for some time and you haven't had much success. What I'd really encourage you to do is to protect your time and to plan out your days and your weeks. So the worst possible thing you can be doing when you're looking for work is basically, again, picking up the phone and just doom scrolling all the time, just spending all of your time just flicking through job advertisements. Kind of every time you pick up your phone, it's just a reminder that you're looking for work. I really recommend that if you are unemployed, you set out your days so that you have clearly allocated time for looking for work and applying, and clearly allocated time when you're not. I would say 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening is the absolute maximum you are doing. So for example, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., you might work on applications, and then from 11 a.m. through to 2 p.m., you're not even picking up your phone. You're cooking, you're exercising, you're going for a walk. You are not touching job applications. Certainly if somebody calls you, you'll take the call. But then again, in the afternoon, you have an allocated 2-hour period, let's say 1 till 3 p.m. You finalize those applications, you submit them, and then you don't even check. You wait until the next morning and then you pick things up again. If you're doing that, that's 20 hours a week. That is enough. Monday to Friday, 20 hours a week. I recommend that you should be spending at least 2 hours on each application. So that's still 10 applications, but you need to protect your time. Don't just sit there scrolling all the time. Don't just sit there looking for work all the time. You've got time to do it, and you've got time to get as far away from it as you can. That's really important. Okay, so I've kind of answered the next question. How many jobs should I apply for each week? So as I've said, my maximum, I recommend that you need to take minimum of 2 hours to do the right amount of research, to write a good cover letter and to tailor your resume. And I recommend that you shouldn't spend more than 4 hours a day applying, 2 lots of 2 hours. And I recommend that you shouldn't do it on the weekend. So that's 20 hours. You could do 10 applications in that time, but realistically, you need to be able to track all of your applications. I see candidates, and the job boards allow this now, they can apply for 50 jobs in an hour. It's just click apply, click apply, click apply. Same resume goes out. It's garbage going out, and you get garbage responses coming back. You need to spend the time on each application. So I would recommend the absolute maximum you should be doing is 10, but I'd also caution that 10 is a lot because you need to keep track of them. We've got some tracking documents that you can use, that you can again download from the Candidate Coach, to make sure that you're tracking everything that you've been applying for. What you don't want is the recruiter to call up and say, "Hey, thanks very much. It's James here. We just received your application." And you're like, "Oh, which job was that?" You don't want to be saying that. That doesn't create a great impression to the recruiter. Another follow-up question here is, how long does the average job search take? I can't tell you, I'm afraid. It's different for everybody. It really is. The role that you're going to eventually land in, if that was advertised today, you might start in it next week. Probably what I find is that I'll use the word older job seekers, so let's say 50 plus, who have had a really successful career, are often surprised how long it takes them to find their next job. And therefore, at the beginning of that process, they might take 3 months off. Let's say you've been offered a redundancy. You've got a 3-month redundancy. Fantastic. Take the 3-month redundancy. Enjoy 3 months. But you need to be aware of the fact that it's probably going to take you longer than you think to find your next job. So maybe instead of waiting until the very last day of the 3 months before applying, maybe a month or two earlier, you might just 1 day a week apply for a job. Just to get things moving. It's going to be different for everyone. There is no answer. Unemployment has gone up to 4.5% in Australia. It's the highest it's been for 4 years. So we are receiving more applications. There is more competition now than there has been over the last couple of years. What should I do if I don't hear back after applying? Oh, great question, because, hey, this happens the majority of the time. You'll get an email that says, "Thank you for applying," and that's probably it. I would certainly encourage you to follow up. If there's a closing date, 1 week after the closing date or 1 week after your application, following up is hard. You need to get on the phone to do it, basically. I would encourage you to do so. But again, it needs to be a well-planned call. You just can't call up and say, "Hey, I want to hear about my application." I would call up and say, "Hey, I've applied and I've got some follow-up questions." But essentially and unfortunately, if you don't hear back, there's no, the employers actually don't have to get back to you, which is sad. How can I tell if a job posting is legitimate or a scam? That's a great question. Well, if it is a scam, it depends where you're applying. If you're on any of the job boards and you think something's a scam or fraudulent, you can report it and just don't apply for it. We are getting more and more scamming happening. And I don't want to scare you with that, but I'm also a director of a recruitment agency called Smart Recruitment, and we are getting more and more people copying our identity or saying that they're from acting as Smart Recruitment. They make up an email address. They send messages out, often via WhatsApp, and they ask people to send back their resume. It's an attempt to grab your details and then do something with those. Obviously, never provide payment details or whatnot. But the best way to avoid any of this is applying through a secure platform like Seek or Indeed or LinkedIn, because if something on there is fraudulent or a scam, it's going to be found extremely quickly and it's going to be removed extremely quickly and hopefully before it gets to you. Okay. Oh, I like this next question. We're actually up to question 14, so we're doing well. Sort of getting through a question a minute. Should I accept the first job offer I receive? Someone's told me never take the first thing you're offered. Uh, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say don't take the job offer just because it's the first. Might be the only job you're offered for a long time. Might be the perfect job for you. So you in your own mind need to have your own selection criteria. And again, back on the Candidate Coach, we've got some coaching resources here that talk to you about how you can create your own selection criteria for you. What are you looking for in the job? And then with each application or even with each advertisement that you look at, you should be then going, okay, how closely does this meet my own selection criteria? If it closely meets it, I'm going to apply. If it doesn't closely meet it, I'm not going to apply. And then likewise, when it comes to the job offer, if you're offered a role, and again, maybe let's say you're offered a role and you weren't 100% sure, it met enough of your criteria to apply, but you weren't sure, how interested you were. You've interviewed well, they've offered you the job, and you're not 100% sure. Talk to your friends, talk to your partner, find out what they think. Consider where you're currently at. If you're not working and you've been struggling to find a job and you're offered a job you're not sure about, I would say take it. It is far better for you to get back working in something that's not your dream job than to be sitting at home continuing to look. And you just don't know what's going to happen next. And it's probably more likely if you've been struggling that it's going to take a fair bit longer if you pass up on this opportunity. So most of the time, I'd say probably take the opportunity, but only you will know. Only you will know, and only you will be able to make that decision. How do I negotiate a salary offer when I would like more money? Great question. Again, we've got a whole coaching video on how to negotiate a better salary offer at the Candidate Coach. But the key advice there from my point of view, first of all, is the first thing you need to know is this salary negotiable? Because you're going to look like an absolute fool if you try to negotiate a non-negotiable salary. So non-negotiable would be working for, say, for a government organisation where the salary is set. It's a federal or state government organisation. There's no flexibility there. They have what's called APS levels, Australian Public Sector levels, and so you can't. If you're offered 55,000 and you want 80,000, their band might be between 55 and 58. You can't negotiate, so you're going to look a little bit embarrassed if you try to do that. Secondly, you've got to have a really good reason why. If you've been offered $55,000 and you want $80,000, there's a huge gap there. That gap is probably too large. You're not going to get there. So you need to determine, okay, well, do I think I can negotiate to 65 and will I be happy? But you've got to tell the employer why. You can't just say, thanks for offering me 55, I want 65. You've got to say, I want 65 because, 1, 2, 3. And one might be, you're looking for someone with 2 years experience and I have 4. You were looking for somebody with a diploma in accounting and I've got a degree. So you need to give your reasons why. You can't just say, I want more money. Negotiating is always tricky. Some of the organizations, some of the companies that I recruit for, they sort of embrace and enjoy the fact that some job seekers want to negotiate their salary. They see that as a good thing. I've got some other people who will say, no, if a candidate wants to negotiate with me, that means they don't want the job. So you've got to be really careful. You are running the risk of having the job offer removed. So make sure that if you are happy with that original offer of 55, take it, or ask very delicately, for a reconsideration. But you need to be aware that once you ask to negotiate a higher salary, you're actually opening up the opportunity of the offer being removed. Question 16, what questions should I ask before accepting the job offer? Okay, so this is really important because a lot of people get super excited. We've been offered the job. We're going to accept the job. Don't start for 4 weeks. And then you think over those 4 weeks, gee, I've got a lot of questions. So some of the things you need to ask before accepting it are basically the questions that are important to you that haven't perhaps been asked during the process and during the interview process. And again, you need to ask so in the right manner. So you need to say, I'm so excited to be offered this job. I really appreciate your time. I do have a couple of quick questions. If you just say, okay, I've got some questions, it's not going to come across really well. So it's the way you go about it. So the questions you might have are, around the hours, the workplace, your manager. What can I expect in my first week? What can I expect in my first month? As we sit here today, we have public holidays that are coming up over the next couple of months. If Christmas is coming up, you might say, what's happening there? I've got a holiday plan. The questions that you need to ask are the questions that are important to you, that you're going to be probably wondering over the next couple of months. But I'd also recommend don't ask 15 questions. Pick the 3 or 4 that are most important to you, and make sure that the employer knows that you're really excited about the offer, even though you're asking questions. How do I best prepare my references to be called? So it is amazing to me how often I will call a referee and say, hey, I'm calling up to do a reference. Mandy gave me your details and said you'd be her referee. I often hear from the referee, haven't heard from Mandy for years. How's she going? And I can tell straight away that that referee is a bit irritated that Mandy hasn't given them the heads up. So the most important thing you can do is to give your referees a heads up, because a lot of the time, most people haven't spoken to their referees for a while, and they're going to give a great reference. But if they haven't heard from you for 2 years and they get a call from me, it actually does impact the reference. It impacts their view. Their view of you has changed because they just think you're going to provide something for them and you haven't even bothered to call to give them a heads up. So the most important thing you can do to prepare your referees is to tell them. You should also tell them about the type of work you're going for, particularly if it's different, because often we will ask the referee, how well suited do you think Mandy would be to this type of job? And if the referee says, that's very different from the previous role, gee, I'm not sure, it's not going to be a great answer. But if the referee says, yeah, Mandy has told me about this career change she wants to make, she's really, really passionate about it, and I think this will be a great step for her, that's a very different answer. So you want to tell your referee, firstly, give them a heads up that you're looking for her, tell them about the type of work that you're applying for. And even to the point of, if you've had 3 interviews and today they say, we'll now move and contact your references, give them that closer heads up. Hey, I just had my 3rd round interview. They said they're going to move to references. So just letting you know. By the way, is there actually a time that would suit you to give them a call? That really helps. Okay, question 18 for today. What paperwork do I often need to complete before starting to give a new job? I really don't like sharing my details and banking information with anyone. Well, I understand that privacy is a big deal, but you are going to need to share your banking details with your employer, or they're not going to be able to pay you. So when you're applying for a job, you will always need to provide your resume. You will often need to provide some identification, and sometimes this can be 100 points of identification depending on the role. So license, passport, birth certificate, those types of things. References, you might need to do some online testing. When you are about to start as an employee, though, you need to provide a lot more information. So you need sometimes to provide medical information. You may need to go for a pre-employment medical check. You need to provide banking information, superannuation information, next of kin, emergency contact. There will be some health questions there as well. You have to provide all this. Your employer is obligated to keep it as secure as possible and not to share that information, but you will need to share it. I've been receiving a lot of rejections. How do I handle these rejections and keep improving? Because most of them don't give me any feedback. I'm sorry to hear that's the case for you, whoever sent that question or statement through. Wherever you can get feedback is great. Feedback is absolutely gold. So for every rejection that you get, even if it's via email, I would ask the question, is there any area where you think I can improve for next time? And the key phrase here is for next time. And I would hope that at least for the job interviews that you're going for, you're receiving feedback. And if you're not, then I would be saying, I really enjoyed meeting with you. So it's positive. I really enjoyed meeting with you. Disappointed I didn't get the job, but where do you think I could improve for next time? And what you're doing by saying for next time is you're not saying, why didn't I get the job or what did I do wrong? You're actually changing the atmosphere. You're changing the environment, and you're making it easy for the recruiter to be honest with you. If you say, okay, well, why didn't I get the job? The recruiter is going to find you to be quite combative, quite confrontational. It's going to be an awkward conversation. They're probably going to be a bit dismissive and say something like other people were stronger. Whereas if you can say, look, thanks for letting me know, I really appreciate it. Where do you think I could improve for next time? I've been looking for work for 2 months now, had a couple of interviews, but if you could give me some honest feedback on where I could improve, that would be great. And then whatever the recruiter says, you just say, thank you for sharing that with me. You don't debate them, you don't argue them, you just say, thank you. It is likely that you will potentially disagree with what they say, but therein lies the rub. You don't actually understand where your weaknesses are a lot of the time. When you hear it from somebody else, it's important to accept it. Okay, now last question today. How do I smoothly transition into a new job after getting hired? So this is a great question to finish with. Once you've been offered the job, I would really encourage you, let's say again, you're starting in 4 weeks, to reach out to your new manager and to say to them, hey, I'm not starting for 4 weeks, but I would love to be able to have a coffee with you. Can we have a coffee with you before then? Because I'd like to get to meet you. I want to hit the ground running. So reaching out and speaking to your manager in advance is absolutely fantastic. If you've got other contacts at that organization, friends or associates that work there, I'd recommend doing the same as well. That's going to really help you straight away. That's what I'd recommend you do beforehand. I would also recommend that you treat the first 30 days like it's a trial, because first impressions really matter. Now, let's imagine you get there 30 minutes early every day of your first month. Your reputation, everyone is going to remember that. Afterwards, you can maybe start arriving on time, but how you start a job is always remembered, and how you finish a job is always remembered. So I would work as hard as you possibly can, as long as you possibly can, do whatever you can to impress everybody in those first 30 days. Well, thanks very much for joining me today. Thank you to everybody who sent those questions through. Just a reminder that you can access so much support material. Many of the questions that you've asked today, we have answers to on your candidate coaching platform. If you don't know where to find them, reach out to me probably on LinkedIn or send me an email, james@candidatecoach.com.au. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and we'll see you next week for our next webinar.